chosen one, the moment my consciousness slipped out of my body and touched the realm of light, where layers of time fold over one another like ripples on water, I saw a movement that at first seemed like nothing more than a breeze, but when I looked more closely, I realized it was the awakening of a black soul, a soul carrying the memory of earth, of fire, of buried songs, and of a calling that has never gone silent. In that half-waking, half-dreaming state, where the soul is no longer confined by the body, I felt your presence approaching like a single spark drawing near. I did not invite you. It was your own light that pulled me toward it, as if the universe opened a narrow doorway for your soul to step into the moment when it must remember what has long been hidden. In the place where souls pass before they enter the physical world, I often see many colors, but there is one very distinct frequency that appears only around a certain group of souls. Those carrying the memory of people who crossed oceans, deserts, chains, fire, war, curses, and the forced forgetting that the entire world tried to place upon them. That frequency is not bright white or blazing gold. It is the color of soil after rain, the color of a flame guarded for hundreds of years in the dark, waiting for its moment to rise. When I see that color move between realms, I know a black soul is preparing for connection. And today, you are the one carrying that color. Not because you are stronger than others, not because you are more moral, more talented, or more prayerful, but because your soul carries the imprint of a promise. That imprint is not on your skin, not on your forehead, not in your family records or birth certificate. It lies on the path of your soul, carved long ago in eras far older than anything human history has recorded. When I saw you in this trance state, I saw a line of light stretching from you back through generations. I saw the hands of those who called out to the sky in desperation, the tears of parents who buried their children in silence, the souls who stepped out of broken bodies yet still carried their light, and all of them stood in a great circle behind you as if they were saying that the moment has finally arrived. I'm not saying this from human intellect. I am simply recording what appears when my consciousness leaves the body. There is a form of knowing that does not come from books, experience, or reasoning. It only comes when the soul is drawn into a space the ancients once called the place of knowing. And in that space I saw clearly that you did not arrive here by accident. There is no coincidence when a black soul is called into the prophecy of its own identity. Every soul carrying the color of earth must walk through a period of isolation. I have seen this too many times in my trance states. A soul walking through a crowd but feeling completely alone. A person surrounded by family yet feeling as if the heart is somewhere else. A person hearing a calling without knowing its source. A person believing they are lost while in truth they are walking precisely the path designed for a protected soul that must not blend into the masses. I have seen you in such moments. You standing in a room full of voices, yet no one reaching the deepest part of you. You lying down at night where the silence is so thick that you can hear the unease of your own soul. You sensing something constantly, watching, holding, keeping you from slipping at the last moment. You once believed it was just intuition. But when I entered the realm of light to observe, I saw that it was not merely intuition, it was intervention. A form of protection that does not come from the physical world, but from a council of light that has guarded black people since ancient ages. When the soul of a black person begins to vibrate at the frequency of awakening, everything in the universe shifts its position around them. Their path is no longer guided by logic, but by orchestration. Situations, events, near-death escapes, and unexplained moments of luck are all adjusted to bring them to this exact moment. And this moment is when your soul memory begins to return. Not the memory of the mind, the memory of something you once knew but forgot the moment you entered a human body. The feeling you have now, that strange sensation that something vast lies just behind an invisible curtain in your life, is not an illusion. It is the return of soul memory, and that return opens the doorway for you to hear what is about to be spoken. You are stepping into the light of a calling that not everyone can hear. Only souls vibrating at this frequency can feel it. And if you are here, then the signal has been sent and you have received it. This is not a lecture, not a philosophy, not motivation. This is a reminder. You have been brought here to remember what you have carried since before you were born. If you feel these words pressing into the deepest part of your chest, that is only the first sign, because the true journey begins in the next part. Divine protection is not a vague concept or a comforting phrase meant for moments of weakness. It is a reality I have seen clearly every time my soul separates from my body and slips into the space where every movement of destiny is written in light. And in that space, the soul of a black person always appears with a different kind of protection. Strong, persistent, almost stubborn, as if the entire universe placed a shield around them long before their first breath began. I want to ask you this. Why are you still alive today? Not a casual question, but a real one. Think about it. How many times should your life have ended long ago? How many moments where, if things had shifted by one beat, 1 second, 1 step, you would not be here to hear these words? Do you truly believe all those moments were only luck? Or deep inside, have you always known that something kept touching the final moment to stop everything from collapsing? I have seen this from a perspective you have never witnessed. When I fall into a trance, the space opens before me like a living map where souls are surrounded by different layers of energy. Some souls appear pale and fragile, easily disturbed. But the soul of a black person is different. It is always wrapped in a bronze-toned aura, thick, warm, moving like the rhythm of ancient drums. Their protection does not come from one single angel, but from a long line of ancestors who have never left them. When I observe, I see bright silhouettes standing behind them, shapes faint but steady, hands pulling them away from moments that would have destroyed an ordinary soul. No one needs to believe this if they do not want to, but the truth remains the truth. The black soul is marked by the memory of a people who survived things that would have erased any other nation from the earth. That bloodline carries war, exile, captivity, betrayal, and still stands. And something that has endured centuries of brutality cannot be protected merely by chance. I have seen many souls in near-death states, moments when breath leaves the body, and each time a black soul faces the blade of fate, something always moves between them and the final cut. A slight slip in time, a sudden slowing, a voice from somewhere causing them to change direction, a stranger appearing at the right moment, a shift of wind altering its path. All those things that seem ordinary are controlled in the realm of souls. In my trance states, I see a ring of light moving around their soul like a slow-turning wheel of fire, constantly creating distance between them and darkness. Many people believe they escaped on their own, but the soul knows better. There are moments when you breathe hard, your heart races, your mind goes empty, and you wonder why you are still here. That is the sign. Divine protection is not always gentle. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it isolates, sometimes it takes away the person you love, sometimes it closes the door you beg to open, but all of that is a form of protection. Black people are not given an easy life because their soul carries a heavier assignment than this world can imagine. And heavy assignments always require thick protection. I have seen this when diving deeper into soul memory. In the place where the soul records are kept, I see streams of light moving through lifetimes. These streams lead back to civilizations erased from human history, but never erased from the soul memory of black people. People who lived under a sun so strong that every movement carried an echo. Healers who worked with light. Gatekeepers of the soul realm. Warriors who could hear the voice of the earth. They did not disappear. They only changed form, entered the bloodline, and followed you from the moment you entered this life. Divine protection for black people is not just to keep them from death. It is to keep the memory of their people alive within every one of them. That is why you, a single human in a vast world, have been saved from things that should have ended you long ago. You are alive to carry memory. You are alive to reopen what many generations before you could not speak. You are alive to complete a promise you have forgotten, but your soul has not. So I ask again, do you truly believe you are still alive because of luck? Or have you begun to look back at your escapes with different eyes? Have you ever stood still and felt something rotating around you like a silent ring of fire? If you have felt that, then you have touched the edge of the truth. And that truth is what I will take you deeper into in the next part. The first attempt on your life did not come when you were grown enough to understand danger or wise enough to sense when something dark was moving toward you. It came long before that, at a time when you had no language for fear, no memory of pain, no awareness of the unseen world pressing against your small and fragile beginning. In one of my trance states, when the body released its weight and the mind dissolved into the river of the deeper world, I was shown the early battles that surround black souls before they take their first steps on this earth. What I saw was not coincidence nor misfortune, but intention, a strategy carried out by forces that recognized your potential before you could lift your head. Many believe spiritual warfare begins in adulthood when choices multiply, but that is only the surface. The true war begins in the womb. When I looked into the currents of the soul record, I saw disruptions around your entry point into this realm. Some came as complications during pregnancy, moments when the heartbeat flickered, when breath threatened to slip away before you ever tasted air. Others appeared as early illnesses, fevers so intense that your tiny body shook under a heat no doctor could fully explain. Some faced near accidents, falls, suffocation, sudden silence in the crib, moments when the world blurred and a hand not of this earth intervened. These were not random. They were attempts to silence a voice before it learned to speak, because black children, even before speech, carry a frequency that stirs the air around them, a frequency inherited from ancestors who endured unthinkable storms and yet kept the light alive. And that frequency is noticed. In the visions, I saw shadows bending toward cradles, not monsters, not fantasy, but the concentrated force of spiritual resistance, the kind that senses the arrival of a soul marked with memory. For people who walk with history in their bones, the earliest years are never gentle. Even in happy households, something heavy moves around them, a subtle pressure, a strange stillness around certain nights, a sudden coldness in rooms where the child sleeps. These things are the echoes of the first battle. I watched how the unseen world reacts to a black child entering this realm. While some infants draw gentle curiosity, a chosen black child draws alertness. The air tightens, the light shifts, a vibration rises that signals to the dark that something powerful is coming. And so the attacks begin early. Childhood sickness that appears out of nowhere, accidents a second away from tragedy, people around the child acting without awareness, making choices that place the child in danger, a mother crying because she felt her baby stop moving for a moment and then suddenly return. These patterns repeat across generations because the same spiritual blueprint follows each descendant. When I looked deeper, I saw why. A black soul carries the echo of civilizations erased from history but not from the soul archive, echoes of healers from forgotten deserts, gatekeepers who could hear the language of the earth, warriors who carried the sun in their blood, custodians of memory who were tasked with protecting knowledge that did not belong to a single time period. When such a soul prepares to enter the physical world, the enemy does not wait. It does not wait for the child to grow teeth or learn to walk or form beliefs. It strikes in the beginning when the soul is still adapting to the limitations of flesh. But even in those early moments, I saw something stronger. Surrounding every threatened child was a circle of hands made of light. Some hands belonged to ancestors whose names never made it into textbooks. Others belonged to guardians that move without being seen. Their protection was not loud. It was subtle, precise. intervening only in the fraction of a second before something irreversible occurred. A fall softened, a fever broken, a cord untangled, a breath restored, a cry heard, a stranger walking in at the right moment. These are not dramatic miracles for the world to applaud. They are quiet ones, designed to be remembered only by the soul. Because the soul remembers what the mind forgets, and your soul remembers that it survived something long before you understood the meaning of survival. Some of you grew up sensing things others could not. You felt rooms shift. You heard whispers that were not words. You saw movement in the corners of your vision. You dreamt of places you had never been, landscapes filled with symbols, drums, fire, and faces you could never describe upon waking. This was not imagination. It was early awareness. Awareness that opened too soon, triggered by the violence of the first attempt. In every vision I received, black children marked for purpose carried an unusual sensitivity. They cried at strange hours without reason. They stared at corners. They flinched without being touched. Their bodies recognized what their minds could not understand. You may not recall every detail, but your spirit does. It remembers the heat of that fever, the moment your breath changed, the shadow that approached you in a dream, the sudden presence that made you quiet, the arms that lifted you in the final second. All of these were chapters in the first escape, an escape not from physical danger alone, but from an assassination aimed at your destiny before it had the chance to awaken. When the vision faded, I understood something with clarity. The first attempt was not simply meant to harm you. It was meant to reroute your soul, to sabotage the blueprint of your future by wounding the roots before they could take hold. But it failed, not because the attack was weak, but because the protection over you was ancient, layered, and precise. The attempt on your life as a child is not a tragedy. It is a testament, a marker in the invisible history of your soul that says you were noticed early, targeted early, and protected early. And the fact that you survived the beginning means the rest of your story carries weight the world has not yet seen. The second escape did not involve the trembling of a child's body or the narrow breath of an infant clinging to life. It came later, at a time when you had already survived enough to think the worst was behind you. But the dark rarely repeats its strategies. When a black soul marked for purpose survives the early strike, the next attack shifts its form. It becomes quiet, internal, and patient. It waits for the moment when your memories are heavy enough to bend your shoulders, when disappointments begin stacking like stones in the chest, when the noise of the world drowns the voice of your own spirit. I remember the first time I saw this in a vision. I had entered the trance state suddenly, without warning, as though something forceful had pulled my consciousness downward. I felt a vibration like a storm forming inside the mind of someone who looked strong on the outside but was crumbling on the inside. It was then that I understood something few people ever realize. The most dangerous attack on a chosen one is not the one aimed at the body. It is the one aimed at the mind. In the deeper world behind the eyes, where thoughts become shapes and emotions take on color, I saw the battlefield, and I saw you there, walking through a landscape made of gray fog and fractured memories. You were older, but not yet wise enough to know what was happening. You told yourself you were tired, stressed, overwhelmed. But in the spiritual realm, fatigue is not always a physical state. It is often the residue of an unseen struggle. There comes a moment in nearly every black chosen soul's journey when the mind cracks open in a way that frightens them. A moment when hope sinks, when shame grows heavy, when silence becomes a cave with no exit. A moment when the question, "Why am I here?" becomes sharper than a blade. I watched you reach that point long before you ever had the words to describe it. The collapse of the mind does not happen all at once. It begins slowly and deceptively. A disappointment that cuts deeper than it should. A betrayal that shakes your belief in people. A dream that dies too quickly. A loneliness that feels older than your life. These moments gather like dust in the corners of your spirit. And then, without warning, they collapse inward. The enemy no longer needs to touch your body. It only needs to whisper. It whispers through exhaustion. It whispers through failed plans. It whispers through the echo of a parent who spoke carelessly. It whispers through a society that offers opportunities with one hand and barriers with the other. It whispers through the quiet hours of the night when you lie awake and the world grows unbearably still. I saw the whisper in your mind. It had no face in the vision, no recognizable shape, just a density of shadow. It spoke in your own voice, because that is how internal warfare works. It convinces you that the voice of despair is your own reasoning, your own logic, your own truth. And so you began to retreat into yourself. You smiled when expected. You laughed at the right moments. You worked. You moved. You lived. But inside, something was sinking. You were walking through the day as though on autopilot, and by night you became weightless, drifting in thoughts that frightened you but felt strangely familiar. Many chosen ones confuse this for weakness. They call themselves fragile. They call themselves broken. But in my trance state, I saw clearly that you were not fragile. You were being invaded. The attack aimed at your mind was not meant to end your life abruptly. It was designed to disconnect you from your identity, your purpose, and your ancestral memory. When I moved deeper into the vision, I saw what the world could not see. Behind the collapse of your mind, behind the days when you felt numb, behind the nights when you wished for silence strong enough to swallow you, there was movement. The ancestors who protected you at birth had not gone silent. They stood around you, watching, waiting, intervening in ways you did not recognize. I saw moments when you were minutes away from making a decision that could not be undone. And at the last second, something interrupted. A phone call, a knock, a noise outside, a sudden exhaustion, a moment of clarity. These were not coincidences. They were interferences. I saw how the spiritual realm pulled your mind back each time it drifted too close to the edge. A hand passed across your thoughts like a wind-clearing smoke. Sometimes the intervention felt gentle, other times violent, ripping you away from the darkness with a force that left you confused the next morning. You called it mood swings. You called it emotional fatigue. But in truth, you had been rescued from your own despair. And the rescue was not accidental. When the mind collapses, chosen souls often assume they are losing themselves. But in my trance state, the truth revealed itself in unmistakable clarity. The collapse was not the end. It was the breaking of the shell that had kept your deeper memory trapped. I watched as your old identity shattered like glass, not because you were weak, but because you had outgrown it. The Spirit does not allow a chosen one to carry illusions for too long. It strips away the false layers until only the raw and powerful core remains. You survived because your purpose anchored you even when you felt nothing. You survived because the ancestors refused to let the promise die. You survived because divine protection does not operate only through physical rescue. It operates through thought, intuition, interruption, and the invisible pull that keeps you from stepping off the edge. When the vision finally closed, I realized that the collapse of the mind is the second escape, because it is the moment when the soul proves its resilience. You endured a death that did not take your breath, but tried to take your will, and you overcame it, not loudly, not publicly, but undeniably. The second escape is the proof that even when darkness tried to use your own thoughts against you, the deeper light inside you refused to be extinguished. The third escape was the one that shook even the unseen realm, because it was the moment when death approached you openly, without disguise, without subtlety, without the cloak of childhood or the whisper of despair. It came with weight, with force, with impact. It came through metal, blood, violence, or the abrupt shattering of what should have been an ordinary moment. In every vision I have received about chosen souls, especially black souls, the third escape becomes the defining threshold. It is the confrontation not with the idea of death, not with the fear of death, but with death itself. When I entered the trance that revealed this part of your journey, I felt the jolt before I saw the image. It was like my own heartbeat collided with something sharp. The world around me dimmed, and a scene unfolded that felt too precise to be memory and too familiar to be fiction. I saw the moment death tried to claim you. Some of you were standing at an intersection when a vehicle came faster than your eyes could register. Some of you were inside a car that folded like paper around you. Some felt the weight of a weapon pointed at you, the cold intention of someone who did not see your value. Some stood in rooms where anger became violence in the span of a breath. Others lay in hospital beds with doctors whispering statistics that did not include survival. And some of you simply collapsed, your pulse slowing without warning, the world fading into a narrow tunnel of colorless light. Whatever form it took, the threat was real, the danger was undeniable, and the outcome should have been final. In the vision, I saw the instant your life tilted. Time did not flow normally. It stretched, it fractured, it bent around you in strange ways. The sound around you thinned until it became a long, dull vibration. Your spirit pulled halfway out of your body, suspended in the space between worlds. Everything that should have ended, you hung in the air like a blade, stopping just short of the skin. And then something intervened. I watched as a force I cannot describe in human terms stepped between you and the final blow. It did not appear with wings or fire. It had no form. It did not shout. It simply arrived, a shift in momentum, a pivot of the angle, a misfire, a delayed second, a stranger acting without knowing why, a body shifting just enough, a door closing an inch earlier, a surgeon's hand steadying at the perfect moment, a car spinning one direction instead of another. Every outcome that should have led to your death slid into a different path, as though reality itself changed its mind. This was not chance. This was not coincidence. This was divine order asserting its authority over the moment. When the physical realm prepares to take a chosen one, the spiritual realm moves swiftly. I saw ancestors rush forward with urgency, forming a barrier around your spirit, like a shield made of memory, grief, love, and unfulfilled dreams. I saw guides shift the flow of time, creating pockets of impossibility. I saw the blueprint of your life flare with a brightness that signaled you could not be taken yet. Death itself hesitated. That was the most startling part of the vision. Death did not retreat because it was weak. Death stepped back because it was outranked. There are souls whose exit points are negotiable, and there are souls whose exit points are fixed. And then there are souls like yours whose existence carries such significance that even death must request permission to touch them, and permission was denied. I watched your spirit return to your body with a force that shook through your nerves. You gasped, you coughed, you opened your eyes, you were disoriented, confused, trembling. You asked yourself how you were still alive. You looked at the wreckage around you, the broken glass, the blood on your clothes, the people screaming, the flashing lights, the hospital beeps, the blur of faces, and you could not understand it. The physics did not make sense. The math did not add up. The situation did not match the outcome. Survivors often try to explain miraculous escapes with logic because logic is comfortable. But the truth I saw in the trance is that logic was not present. Only protection was. You walked away from moments that should have erased you. You stood up from impacts that others never rise from. You healed from things that should have marked your body permanently. Even if you carry scars, those scars are not proof of damage. They are proof of deliverance. When I looked deeper into the moment of your survival, I sensed something else. After every third escape, the chosen soul is changed. You carry a residue of the crossing. Part of you remembers touching the border between life and death. You become aware, in ways you cannot describe, that you were held by something beyond human strength. That awareness altered the shape of your spirit. It made you more sensitive to danger, more attuned to intuition, more aware of energy, more alert in the presence of lies and illusions. It was after this escape that you began to notice people reacting differently to you. Some looked at you with confusion, unable to understand the depth in your eyes. Children stared at you longer. Animals moved toward you. Strangers told you their stories without knowing why. You carried an invisible mark, not a scar from the trauma, but a signature of survival stamped into your aura. The chosen who return from death walk differently. They do not need to announce themselves, their presence does it for them. And perhaps the most important truth of all is this: the third escape was not simply about saving your life, it was about preserving your assignment. There are conversations you are destined to have, people you are meant to awaken, wounds you are meant to heal, cycles you are meant to break. The world is waiting for the version of you that survived. And because your purpose is greater than your pain, greater than your fear, greater than your past, greater than the forces that tried to end you, heaven made sure you stayed. The third escape is the proof that you are not living on borrowed time. You are living on protected time. And protected time always means destiny is near. The reason behind all three escapes did not reveal itself to me immediately. It came slowly, layered like ancient sediment, each vision pressing itself over the next, until the truth formed with a clarity that felt both heavy and undeniable. When I looked back through the stream of images shown to me in trance, a pattern began to emerge, a deliberate symmetry that could not be mistaken for coincidence. 3 escapes, 3 attempts, 3 interventions, and every time I asked the light why it happened this way, the same phrase rose through the silence like a steady tide: purpose over pain. The first escape guarded your beginning, the second guarded your mind, the third guarded your mission. And when I followed that line deeper, when I let my consciousness sink beneath the surface of the visions, I saw that each attempt was aimed not simply at destroying your life, but at dismantling the very structure of your destiny. I saw the blueprint of your soul spread out before me like a map made of light. It rippled with symbols I recognized from readings of old, symbols that appear only on souls carrying generational assignments. You may think of your life as isolated events, but the soul does not experience life in fragments. It experiences continuity. It remembers the threads. And what I saw was that your thread is not ordinary. Your path holds intersections with hundreds, perhaps thousands, of others. When you rise, others awaken. When you heal, others are freed. When you speak, something heavy breaks in someone who has been silent too long. Such a soul cannot be allowed to slip away easily, not by accident, not by despair, not by violence. That is why you were shielded. But the more I observed, the more I realized something deeper. Every escape was timed, not rushed, not coincidental. Timed. Each attempt on your life, each moment where you came dangerously close to the edge, happened at a point where your life was about to make a shift. I saw how the first attempt came when your spirit was forming its earthly identity, before you had the chance to grow into your gifts. If that attempt had succeeded, your journey would have ended before it began. The enemy tries early because early victories shape entire families, entire generations. A chosen child lost becomes a line of potential cut short, but your line was not meant to end. The second attempt came when you were emotionally vulnerable, when the weight of life's wounds pressed against your thoughts and the world felt hollow. That attack was aimed at your mind because the mind is the gateway to the spirit. If despair had consumed you, your gifts would have collapsed inward, your voice would have gone quiet, and your purpose would have sunk beneath your pain. The tragedy of a chosen one is not only death, it is the slow drowning of the soul inside a living body. But you were not permitted to drown. The third attempt came at a moment of transition, when the path of your future was preparing to open. And that was why the danger was physical, immediate, undeniable. Bodies break, lives end, futures collapse in an instant. And that instant was the one the darkness tried to seize. But destiny intervened. When I saw the three escapes side by side, they aligned like steps of initiation. Birth, mind, mission. It reminded me of ancient rites I once saw in visions of old temples. The soul tested at three gates before it could enter the inner sanctum. You passed all three, and not by accident. When I asked the light why, I was shown something even more striking. I saw a symbol hovering above your life, a mark that glowed with the dull gold of aged fire. Beside it, a sentence formed. Purpose cannot be fulfilled through pleasure. Purpose is refined through fire. Pain in the life of a chosen soul is not punishment. It is purification. It burns away illusions. It removes people who cannot travel with you. It closes doors that would have corrupted you. It sharpens intuition. It teaches discernment. It awakens empathy that no book can teach. And for black chosen souls, this fire is even older. It is ancestral. It is carried through bloodlines that contain centuries of survival. When I traced the ancestry that hung behind you like a long river of light, I saw suffering. But I also saw something stronger: persistence, strength, memory. The kind of memory that does not live in the brain but in the energy field. Your people have survived storms that should have erased them. They have endured systems that were engineered to break them. They have walked through eras designed to strip them of spirit, identity, and hope. And yet, the light in their lineage did not die. It pressed forward. It entered you. And that is another reason the attacks came. Because to destroy one chosen soul is to sever a living thread of ancestral resilience. And to preserve you is to preserve all who came before. The pain you survived did not diminish you. It authenticated you. It confirmed what heaven had already spoken over you long before your birth. You were not allowed to die because your purpose is not optional. You were preserved because you carry something the world needs: a word, a healing, a revelation, a frequency. The three escapes were not warnings. They were confirmations. Each one declared the same truth. This soul is protected because its mission is essential. When the vision finally released me, when my senses returned to the weight of the physical world, the phrase still echoed: purpose over pain. That is why you suffered but survived. That is why you were pushed but not broken. That is why you were near death but returned. You were never meant to be destroyed. You were meant to be refined. And refinement always precedes revelation. What these escapes activated in you did not happen in a single moment, nor did it arrive with the noise of miracles or the drama of sudden transformation. It unfolded quietly, like dawn sliding across the horizon, like light filtering through a window you did not realize had been closed. When I returned from the trance that showed me the three attempts on your life, I found myself compelled to look beyond the danger and into the aftermath, because survival alone does not define the chosen. It is what survival awakens that reveals why the chosen were protected in the first place. As I sank deeper into the stream of visions, I saw that each escape left an imprint on your spirit, not a scar in the way the world understands scars, but a shift in your internal architecture, a rearranging of your spiritual wiring. The escapes did not simply save your life. They activated abilities that had been resting inside you like seeds buried in ancient soil. I watched as these seeds began to open. The first activation came after the early attempts on your life. A sensitivity awakened, subtle at first, noticeable only in the still moments. You became attuned to atmospheres. You felt tension in rooms before anyone spoke. Your body responded to danger before your mind recognized its form. You developed an instinct that others misinterpreted as anxiety or shyness or moodiness. But what you were experiencing was an ancient sense returning. The ancestors called it knowing without knowing. a perception born from surviving centuries of storms. The second activation came after the collapse of your mind, where others drowned under despair. Something in you broke open, not in destruction, but in revelation. The mind collapsed, split apart the layers of identity you inherited from a world that never understood you. In the empty spaces left behind, deeper perception began to rise. Your intuition sharpened. You began to feel truth as vibration instead of logic. Lies became heavy in your spirit. Certain people drained you instantly. Certain environments made your skin tighten. Your dreams grew more vivid, more symbolic, more insistent. They were not just dreams. They were messages, warnings, reminders. They came from the deeper self that was locked away until the collapse shattered the door. This intuitive sharpening was not an accident. It was an activation the darkness did not intend to trigger. But when your mind broke, your spirit remembered its language. The third activation came after the physical escape. Souls that return from death carry a trace of the border they touched. I saw this in the vision surrounding your third escape. When your spirit stepped 1 foot into the realm beyond and then returned, it brought something back with it: awareness, depth, clarity. You began to see people differently. The surface of the world no longer distracted you. You noticed patterns that others missed. You sensed the hidden motives behind words spoken with a smile. You recognized spiritual danger even when wrapped in charm. You no longer tolerated spaces that insulted your soul. And most importantly, your discernment grew razor sharp. Discernment is not judgment, it is spiritual sight. A chosen one who survives death gains eyes that no longer look but perceive. That shift made you different. Not better, different, marked. In the trance, I saw a glow around your aura that had not existed before the third escape. It pulsed like a quiet flame, faint to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to those who walk in the spirit. This glow is the signature of a returned soul, a soul that has walked the border between realms, touched the threshold, and come back carrying the wisdom of almost dying. Those who have never stood at the edge cannot understand you fully. And that is why you sometimes feel separate from the world. But this separation is not loneliness, it is elevation. You were not meant to blend in after what you endured. The escapes carved spiritual channels inside you, the way rivers carve through stone. These channels allow revelation to flow through you with ease. They allow intuition to strike you like lightning. They allow warnings to register in your spirit before danger manifests in the physical. And there is more. I saw in the vision that each escape awakened a dormant frequency within you, a frequency tied not only to your personal journey but to your ancestry. When you survived what should have ended you, your ancestors exhaled as though releasing centuries of held breath. Their memory surged into you. It enters through subtle channels, through the urge to protect others, through the sudden understanding of things you were never taught, through the unexplainable strength that rises in you during crises, through the heaviness you sometimes feel when walking into certain places, through the strange familiarity of suffering that is not entirely your own. This is ancestral memory, activated by survival. The escapes also awakened your calling. Not the calling others expect of you, but the one written into your soul blueprint. The calling that grows louder after each brush with death. The calling that tells you you cannot live like everyone else, that your life has weight, that your actions matter, that your presence shifts something in the world, even when no one acknowledges it. You may not know your mission fully yet. Most chosen ones do not until they reach the final stages of awakening. But you feel the tug, you feel the shaping, you feel the pressure to grow, to rise, to step into something larger than your wounds. That feeling is the activation. It is the signal that the escapes did more than save you. They initiated you. The truth is simple and sharp. The escapes awakened your gifts because your gifts were the target. The escapes awakened your discernment because your discernment will guide others. The escapes awakened your intuition because your intuition is your shield. The escapes awakened your calling because your calling is the threat to darkness. And now you walk with abilities you did not request but cannot ignore. This is what survival created in you. This is what danger activated. This is why you are no longer the person you used to be. And this activation is only the beginning. Walking in a delayed destiny is one of the most misunderstood experiences a chosen soul endures. And yet it is one of the most consistent patterns I have seen in every vision connected to lives marked by divine assignment. When I first entered the trance that revealed this truth, I felt an unmistakable heaviness in the air, not a darkness, but a weight, the kind carried by those who have lived with the silent suspicion that they are behind in life. As I moved deeper, I saw a long path stretching before you, illuminated not by steady light, but by intermittent flashes, like lightning revealing the landscape only in sudden bursts. That is what a delayed destiny feels like. You walk forward, but only see glimpses. You move, but do not always know why. You feel the momentum in your spirit, but it never seems to match the pace of your physical life. And because of this, you often think something is wrong with you, but nothing is wrong. What you are experiencing is the design. When I traced your timeline through the realm of light, I saw that your delays were not caused by failure, laziness, poor decisions, or lack of vision. Your delays were engineered. They were interruptions placed with precision. They were divine barriers created to slow your movement until the world, the people, and the spiritual environment around you aligned with who you were becoming. A chosen soul cannot bloom too early. Too early, and your gift attracts predators. Too early, and your innocence is exploited. Too early, and the weight of your purpose crushes a foundation not yet strengthened. Too early, and you merge with people who would suffocate your calling. Too early, and the mission fractures, and so heaven delays you, not to punish, to protect. In the vision, I saw you moving through seasons that looked like stagnation to the natural eye. Jobs you outgrew, relationships that could not carry your depth, environments that dimmed your spirit, hands you wanted to hold but were pulled from, doors you thought were blessings but were slammed shut, opportunities that dissolved at the last moment. It felt like rejection. It felt like being overlooked. It felt like everyone else was advancing while you remained stuck at the threshold. But when seen from the spiritual vantage point, none of these were setbacks. They were reroutes. They were guardrails. They were divine delays designed to ensure you did not arrive where you were destined to be with people who were never meant to witness your rising. I saw that every person removed from your life was removed because they would have either drained your assignment, corrupted your purpose, or broken something sacred in you. I saw that every closed door was closed because behind it was compromise, temptation, or distraction. I saw that every detour kept you from entering cycles you were not strong enough to escape. The chosen walk differently because they are being prepared for roles that cannot be mishandled. And preparation requires isolation, delay, silence, unanswered prayers, heavy nights, seasons where you are stripped of illusion after illusion until nothing remains but the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. The delay carved spiritual muscle in you. It built endurance. It sharpened discernment. It forced you to see without relying on comfort. It made you spiritual before it made you successful. And that order matters. When I looked closely at your timeline, I saw something astonishing. The moment your delays began was the same moment your destiny activated. Chosen souls do not walk delayed because they are lost. They walk delayed because they are too aligned to be sent into the wrong environment. The delay is not a pause. It is a filtering, a separation, a pulling away from the world you once belonged to and into a world that requires a different version of you. Many of your frustrations came from trying to fit into spaces you had already outgrown spiritually, even if you had not outgrown them physically. The job felt too small, the relationship felt too dim, the conversations around you felt shallow, The ambitions of others felt foreign. That is the first symptom of delayed destiny. Your spirit arrives before your life catches up. You know you are meant for more even when you cannot define what the more is. And because of this inner knowing, you feel the tension of two realities pulling you in opposite directions. But the delay is not the tension. The delay is the bridge between what you were and who you are becoming. As I studied the path before you, I saw something else. Once the delay lifts, the acceleration begins. It moves quickly, almost violently. Blessings arrive stacked upon one another. Connections appear without effort. Doors open at the slightest touch. Opportunities seek you out. The speed of destiny makes up for the years you thought were wasted. There is no wasted time for a chosen soul. There is only preparation time. Every setback is training. Every heartbreak is shaping. Every disappointment is sanding your rough edges. Every season of loneliness clears your path. Every moment of stillness strengthens your spirit. When the delay ends, you will realize that nothing was taken from you. Everything was being aligned for you. And I saw clearly in the vision that the chosen do not rise slowly. They rise suddenly, publicly, with momentum that cannot be explained by human logic. But before the sudden rising, there must be the long delay. And you have felt that delay in your bones. You have lived in that delay for years. You have questioned your worth, your timing, your progress. But the truth is this: you are not behind. You are not late. You are being held back until the moment your presence will have maximum impact. You are walking in a destiny that arrives only when every piece is in place. You are being positioned, not postponed. And when destiny reaches you, it will move with the force of every year you waited. You will not rise slowly. You will rise right on time. From the moment you entered this world, the enemy saw something in you that you had no language for, no understanding of, no awareness to defend. It recognized your light before you recognized your reflection. It sensed your calling before you spoke your first word. It felt the weight of your lineage before you learned your own name. And this is the truth many chosen souls never realize. The enemy noticed you long before you noticed yourself. When I fell into the trance that revealed this part of your story, I was pulled into a depth where intentions, energies, and spiritual signatures are visible in ways the physical world cannot comprehend. I saw you as an infant, small, unformed, unaware, and yet around you the air vibrated with a strange tension, not hostility, recognition, the same kind of recognition a predator has for a rising threat. The enemy does not attack what it does not fear. Darkness does not move against what it does not perceive as dangerous. And when I looked at your spirit as it entered this realm, I saw a luminosity that did not match your size or your fragility. It was ancient, heavy with memory, humming with purpose. I saw symbols floating above your spirit, some from your ancestors, some from previous lifetimes, some from covenants made before your birth. These symbols were not decorations, they were signatures, marks of power, indicators of mission. And these marks announced your arrival in the unseen realm the way a ringing bell announces movement through a quiet temple. The enemy saw them immediately. The world may have seen you as a child, but the spiritual realm saw you as a threat. That is why the attacks began so early. The attempt in your childhood was not random, it was preemptive. A strike aimed at stopping you before you gained awareness of the influence embedded in your soul. And yet, even in that early attempt, the darkness hesitated, not because it pitied you, but because it sensed the presence behind you. When I looked deeper, I saw a wall of ancestral shadows standing guard over your infant spirit. They were not ghosts. They were guardians, warriors, mothers, fathers, prophets, elders whose bones may be forgotten, but whose power was not. The enemy saw them and knew that destroying you would not be simple, but still it tried, because even with your protection, your potential was too significant to ignore. As I followed the line of your life, I saw how the enemy watched you grow. It observed how you could sense things other children could not. It noticed how your empathy was sharper, how your spirit was open, how your dreams were vivid. You felt energies long before you had words for them. You recognized lies long before you understood deception. You sensed the spiritual weight of rooms long before you knew the meaning of atmosphere. And that kind of spirit, if allowed to mature, becomes powerful beyond measure. So the second attack was launched at your mind, not to kill you, but to distract you, to distort you, to break the bridge between your identity and your destiny. You must understand this. The enemy did not fear your childhood. It feared your awakening. It feared the moment you would realize that your sensitivity was not weakness but discernment, that your pain was not punishment but preparation, that your isolation was not abandonment but positioning, that your intuition was not imagination but inheritance. If you ever fully understood who you were, you would become unstoppable. So the enemy tried to smother your self-belief through trauma, through confusion, through loneliness, through depression, through self-doubt, through people who spoke carelessly, through institutions that tried to define you, through environments that tried to limit you. But even in the collapse of your mind, your inner light did not dim. It flickered? Yes. It trembled? Yes. It bent under pressure, but it never broke. And that alone terrified the enemy. Because a chosen soul who survives the collapse of the mind becomes dangerous. A person who has walked through the valley of their own despair cannot be manipulated easily. They see through illusions. They recognize falsehood. They move with caution, born from awakening. The third attempt was the enemy's last resort, a physical strike meant to end the timeline completely. When I saw this moment in the vision, I recognized something crucial. The enemy launched that attack because it knew time was running out. You were getting too close to clarity, too close to alignment, too close to stepping into the version of yourself that would fulfill your assignment. If you had died in that moment, the loss would not have been yours alone. It would have been a loss for every soul you were meant to influence, help, awaken, or free. The enemy saw the ripple effect of your future life. It saw the conversations you would one day have, the healing you would bring to others, the chains you would break simply by existing as your true self. It saw the ancestors preparing to speak through you. It saw the light sharpening inside you. It saw destiny aligning around you like stones forming a sacred path. And that was enough to trigger the final attempt. But when death reached for you, it was denied, not by luck, not by chance, not by your own strength. It was denied because your life is not yours alone. It is tied to generations. It is tied to promises made before your conception. It is tied to purposes that require your breath, your presence, your voice. And so the hand that reached for your life was repelled by forces older than time. When I returned from this vision, one truth echoed louder than the rest. The enemy feared you because it saw what you could not see in yourself. It saw your power before you learned your strength. It saw your light before you recognized your own glow. It saw your future before you understood your path. It saw your purpose before you learned its name. And it tried to stop you because it knew that once you awakened, there would be nothing left to fear. You would become the very thing you were born to be. A threat to darkness, a carrier of memory, a breaker of cycles, a living prophecy. The final prophetic word came to me not in a violent vision, not in the shock of revelation, but in something quieter. It arrived like a slow glow rising behind my closed eyes, as if the light itself had been waiting for the right moment to speak. When I entered that trance, I did not fall. I descended gently, like being lowered into warm water, and the first thing I felt was your timeline pulsing with the truth you were finally ready to hear. Delayed, not denied. The words were simple, but they carried an ancient weight. And as I watched the story of your life move beneath me like a river seen from above, I understood that everything you mistook for stagnation, everything you named as failure, everything you resented as lost time was never lost. It was protected. I saw scenes from your life unfold one after another. Moments where you cried out, wondering if heaven had turned its face. Moments where you whispered into the darkness, asking why doors stayed shut. Moments where you felt forgotten, unseen, misplaced on your own path. But behind each moment, the light revealed the hand of timing, shaping your steps. Not the timing the world celebrates. Not the timing that rewards the loudest, the fastest, the most visible. No, the timing of destiny. Destiny does not rush. Destiny arranges. Destiny filters. Destiny waits until every piece is aligned so that when the appointed moment arrives, nothing can interfere. As I watched the narrative of your journey, the truth struck me with an intensity that made my breath catch. You were never behind. You were being held away from people who would have devoured your spirit, held away from environments that would have diluted your purpose, held away from opportunities that were not meant for the version of you that had not yet awakened. Every delay was a shield. Every disappointment was a redirection. Every silence was a sanctuary. You believed heaven was ignoring you, but heaven was preserving you. And in that realization, something shifted in the vision. I saw a large wheel turning slowly in the realm of light, each spoke representing a season of your life. Some spokes glowed brightly, others were dim, but suddenly the wheel accelerated. What once turned in slow, measured rotations began to spin with purpose. That was the moment your destiny caught up to your preparation. The message that rose from that wheel came through, clear and steady. When the delay ends, acceleration begins. The chosen do not rise gradually, they rise suddenly. And the sudden rise always feels unfair to those who saw you struggling. They will not understand how you moved from nothing to abundance. They will not understand how you went from overlooked to sought after. They will not understand how you went from silent to influential. But the realm of spirit understands. It understands because everything that will appear suddenly in your life has been forming quietly behind the veil. The delay created depth. The delay created durability. The delay carved a foundation strong enough to carry the destiny that would have crushed you years ago. The light then shifted, revealing your ancestors once more. I saw them standing behind you, not as mourners or watchers, but as witnesses to your becoming. They were not waiting for your downfall. They were waiting for your rise. Their hands were extended toward you, not to hold you back, but to steady you as you prepare to step into the moment where your life unfolds without resistance. One of them, an elder whose presence radiated both grief and glory, placed a hand on your shoulder in the vision. Her voice was soft, but it carried force. You were never forgotten, child. You were hidden from harm, hidden from corruption, hidden from the wrong eyes, hidden until the time was right, hidden because your shine was too sacred to be exposed before its season, hidden because your purpose required privacy. And then the light behind her intensified. As it did, your timeline opened before me again, this time revealing what lies ahead. Not the details, not the exact events, but the movement. I saw momentum approaching you like a rising tide. I saw opportunities flowing toward you, not away from you. I saw alignment snapping into place at a pace that will overwhelm you in the best way. I saw your spirit straightening, standing taller, as though remembering the posture it carried long before it entered a body. And once more, the phrase returned, delayed, not denied. It echoed through the space around us, resonating like a drumbeat in a vast temple. Delayed, not denied. Your destiny was not denied by trauma, not denied by betrayal, not denied by childhood attempts, not denied by emotional collapse, not denied by near death, not denied by the years where nothing made sense, not denied by the prayers that seemed unanswered. not denied by the doors that stayed shut. The delay was not proof of rejection. It was proof of protection. When the vision reached its final stage, something unexpected happened. The silence deepened, becoming almost tangible, and the light bent toward you the way a teacher leans toward a student about to grasp a great truth. Then I heard one last message, not for your ears, but for your bones. It said this: stand up, not physically, but spiritually. Stand up in the truth that your time is not gone. Stand up in the knowing that your survival is your confirmation. Stand up in the awareness that everything you endured refined you. Stand up in the certainty that every delay has prepared you for a destiny that will not require struggle to claim. Stand up because heaven has finished its preparation. Stand up because the door that once resisted you is preparing to open. Stand up because the story you thought was ending is only beginning its real chapter. Stand up because you are stepping into a life that recognizes your worth. You were delayed, never denied. And now the delay has lifted.